All right, welcome to the event. Thank you so much for everybody that is joining us live today. And if you're listening to this recording, thank you so much for tuning in. So today we're going to be talking about a very important topic. And the title of the event is how to instantly be in the top 1% of applicants, specifically in today's job market. And of course, I'll explain what I mean by that throughout the conversation today. My name is Vadim Revzin. If we haven't met before, really good to see you here. However you found out about this event, I'm one of the founding directors here at School 16, and we put on events like this for the community, for our alumni, for people in our network to help share what we're learning about the market. You know, the way that we think about our education at School 16, and the reason why we started this school, is we believe that any education needs to be practical and needs to be just in time, if that makes sense, right? The world is constantly changing. Tech is constantly changing. And so it's really important to adjust your approach, whether you're job searching, whether you're selling yourself, whether you're a marketer and you're looking to pick up new skills. There's no such thing as standing still. And that's certainly important in today's world when things are constantly changing. And so I will be talking about our program in a little bit for those of you that are interested, but I'm going to skip this slide right now and get right into the agenda. So I'm going to wrap up the introduction in a couple of minutes here. And then we're going to start the discussion and the conversation about what we're seeing in the market right now, right? What are some of the market shifts that are happening real time? There's obviously, as everyone on this call knows, there's been a lot of changes, some good, many bad. How do we navigate all of these changes in the market to win in the market in the end of the day, right? To get the best opportunities. I'm also going to be talking about how to leverage a network, your network, people you don't know, to get the results that you're looking for. And I know everyone here has heard about networking ad nauseum. Today, we're going to talk about it in the most practical sense. I'm going to be sharing with you exactly what we teach our students in the first few weeks in our career development modules at School 16 and how that's evolved over time and why this is such an important piece of the puzzle. I'm also going to be talking today throughout the whole session on how to move up to the top of the list, which is the title of today's event. And yes, this is not easy. It's not easy to be noticed by employers, but there is a way to stand out from the crowd relatively quickly if you just do the right things. And we're going to be talking about exactly how to do that today, okay? Will I share some shortcuts and secrets? Sure, but also let's be upfront. This stuff isn't easy and it takes work, but there's the wrong work that you can do. There's time that you can waste, right? When you're looking for opportunities, when you're looking to advance your career, even if you have a job looking to, transition, let's say, careers within your organization, there's things that you can do right and there's things that you could do that'll completely waste your time. Let's make sure nobody here is wasting their time, okay? As you can see at the bottom here, the Q&A over chat is going to be facilitated throughout the event. So we're not just going to, I am going to be doing a lot of talking today, but we're not going to wait until the very end of the session to answer questions. If you have a question, maybe I won't get to it immediately, but I will see it in the chat. I'm pretty good at using chat and talking at the same time. And I will try to address it and weave it into what we're talking about. And again, I always say this, but if you think of a question, probably somebody else is thinking about it, or they're going to be glad that you asked it, right? So everybody's going to benefit from your questions, and there is no such thing as a simple or dumb question, and there's no question too complicated. We're going to try to answer anything that comes up, okay? We do that with our students every day. We're certainly going to do it today with you. So don't wait until the end. Use the chat. And if it's a really personal question that for some reason I can't get to, I'll try to stay at the end and answer it for you, okay? So let's get right into it and let's talk about some of the shifts that are happening in the market that maybe some of you are noticing if you are trying to pursue new opportunities. Now, the first thing I'll say is there's a lot of information out there, some of it really, really high quality information if you're spending a lot of time on LinkedIn or Reddit or whatever it is. Some of it is irrelevant, and some of it is downright discouraging, okay? So if you're finding yourself consuming stuff online and you're seeing people, coming at it from a negative perspective, I will say it's kind of like the news, right? If you're watching the news, you're probably going to hear something that's not going to make you happy. It's just how it is. That stuff sells, it gets likes, it gets clicks. So the same thing goes for a lot of the stuff we see online. And if you feel like you're getting discouraged because you're reading something online or somebody else is struggling, Well, yes, of course, there's people that are struggling, but let's not intake negative information whenever we can, especially if we're going through something as inherently difficult as looking for new opportunities. You want to try to be in a positive state of mind when you do this, and you need positive reinforcement. A lot of what we're going to talk about today is how to get wins during your search in a short period of time, right? How to get that meeting, whether it's even a coffee chat with someone, how to get somebody to introduce you to a hiring manager, all these things that actually feel great during the process, and motivate us to keep on going. But some of the things we do read are true, and let's talk about what that means. So what is happening in the market? What is happening with a lot of employers? Obviously, a lot of folks are reading about layoffs on a daily basis. Well, again, remember, layoffs are happening. Yes, that is true. They're happening a little bit more frequently. It is coming into our feeds, but one of the biggest reasons why layoffs are happening is because when times were good, where, a lot of companies raised money, they had more capital than they knew what to do with, they were hiring a lot of people. They were over hiring. Okay. If you look at Amazon, in 2020, 2021, even into 2022, they hired a huge percentage of their workforce, more than they had probably in the 5 to 10 years before that. And so what that means is if there's any economic shift after that, it'll of course contract. So some of the layoffs, especially the ones that were happening early on, were because companies overhired. And so that creates a certain sentiment in the market, but that's how things go. The other biggest piece is a lot of organizations are moving to capital efficiency. What does that mean is, well, they're looking to save money. That's what that means. It's pretty straightforward. They want to extend their runway. Extending runway means literally have more time, more room to land the plane, more time to figure out the business model. And what that usually means is freeing up capital. And so, of course, a lot of people suffer because of that. And Caitlin, great question. I am definitely going to talk about what the biggest time wasters are in a couple of seconds here, actually. So good timing for that question. But moving to capital efficiencies, you got to understand that that's what a lot of businesses are thinking about. That's what their investors are telling them. That's what their board is telling them. Hey, why are you not profitable? Well, remember a couple of years ago, if you've been following the news in tech and in startups, the biggest thing was growth at all cost. Grow users, grow customers, show growth, even though maybe you're not really growing, right? Because the investors want to be happy. And so when you have the growth at all cost mentality, the true metrics of an organization, which is make revenue, make money, and try not to spend as much money, as more money than you're making. Those things aren't prioritized if you're just trying to, let's say, make investors happy and show really great numbers. But in a down economy, which is cyclical, this stuff happens every 5, 10 years, 15 years, companies become more capital efficient. Why is that important to know? Well, obviously that's going to impact the numbers when it comes to hiring, but it's also going to impact how you're going to talk to employers. When you're talking to employers, when you're selling yourself, whatever role you're selling yourself for, there are one of two things you should always prioritize in communicating, either directly or indirectly. Number one, how are you going to help the company make money? Even if you're not in a sales role, whatever you're doing, creating optimization, creating efficiency, whatever it is, it has to help the company be more efficient. Or how are you going to help them save money and save time? If you can communicate that effectively in an economy like this, where organizations are more capital efficient, the hiring manager's ears will perk up. And I can guarantee you most people that are looking for opportunities don't take that step. They don't think about the business, but companies are in the business of business, right? They have to make money in order to be able to pay all of our salaries. And so in the end of the day, if you can attach the work that you do to that, you're going to be successful. You have to remember that some roles, yes, they are moving offshore. This is true. One of the trends that I'm seeing, especially for sales organizations, is starting to hire more of their SDRs abroad, right? To cut costs that they're spending on folks that are, let's say, setting meetings if it's a B2B organization. The way that teams are structured has evolved, especially in tech, over time. It always does, and it always will. And things that worked 10 years ago will not work going forward. That's one of the bigger shifts that's happening in the market right now for B2B organizations that sell or provide services and products to other organizations, is they're restructuring their sales teams. What that means is that a percentage of the staff will be hired abroad, but these companies will still be looking locally for a lot of talent, especially for specialized roles, or especially for people with domain expertise, which we'll talk about in a couple of minutes. But that means that for certain roles, maybe don't waste your time applying for them if you think that some of those are moving offshore. Yes, there is some increased competition for remote roles. Everybody wants to work remotely, especially after COVID. That means that if you are more flexible, and if you can be more flexible, especially those of you here that are earlier in your career, you're going to have a competitive advantage. You've probably already read about that yourself. So I would say definitely open up yourself to that, especially if it's a financial decision for you, like I need to make money. Well, that means that you have to remember that for remote roles or 100% remote roles, obviously they're awesome and many of us got used to them, but you kind of have to weigh to see where you want to compete. And there's a lot more competition for those roles right now. Okay. And last but not least, there is, even though it might be hard to believe sometimes, especially if you've been looking for an opportunity for a while, there are definitely talent gaps right now within organizations. Okay. And then we'll talk about that today, which takes me to this next. I'm going to show you a couple of screenshots today of some of the things that we've been coming across, but also that we've heard from hiring managers. All of this is backed up through sort of primary source information that we hear in the market, because we work with these organizations. Oftentimes we hire instructors from big tech companies. We hear exactly what these hiring managers are saying. And one of the things they're saying is that there absolutely is a talent gap. And one of the biggest reasons is when job posts go up, it is very, very difficult to actually get applicants that are relevant. Okay. Now, yes, that puts people on this call that are looking for opportunities at a little bit of a disadvantage, but that's exactly why we're hosting the meeting today. We're going to talk about how to circumnavigate it, so you're not competing with a lot of irrelevant people. Okay. That is the number one priority of what you're going to be focusing on, what you should be focusing on, not to waste your time. Hitting easy apply and the like is the number one thing that is a waste of time. You know how many people I've talked to and or read about that have applied to 200, 300, 500, 1,000 jobs in the last 6 months. Okay. We're going to talk about why that doesn't work and why you shouldn't be wasting your time on that. It is a giant time suck. It's causing people stress right now in the market, and it shouldn't be done. Now, this gentleman here said, don't even bother responding to a job posting right now. I will respectfully disagree. You still have to oftentimes follow the company's process, but just applying won't work. And we're also going to talk today about how to get in front of opportunities that aren't even listed on job boards. But the sentiment of what this gentleman is saying is true, which is you need to reach out to people in your network. We're going to talk about exactly how to do that today, how to leverage your network. But I have several friends in the market right now. I have one friend, namely, we're going to host an event with him in a couple of weeks. He just got a job at Tesla after looking for 9 months, 9 or 10 months, actually. And his network ultimately is what helped him get the opportunity, and his negotiation skills and persuasion skills pushed it over the edge. Okay. So we're going to talk about how you can do the same thing and not have to wait 8, 9, 10 months in order to be able to accomplish that. Okay. So becoming a top 1% candidate. We're going to talk about primarily these two themes today: how to leverage your network or a network, and how to move to the top of the list when you are, if you did apply to a job. How do you make sure that you're moving to the top of the list of consideration for a hiring manager? Okay, so network activation and how to get in front of unlisted opportunities, because believe it or not, oftentimes the best jobs aren't even listed. Okay, and oftentimes hiring managers or executives within organizations or startups have an idea for a role, have a pain that they're experiencing, and they only address that pain when somebody comes along, when somebody relevant comes along. It's your job to be that relevant person that comes along and says, hey, by the way, I'm the person that you've been looking for, even if you don't have a job posted yet. Okay, so how to start developing a network. Hopefully everybody in this room has spent at least a little bit of time thinking about growing their network. But if you haven't, we're going to systematize it today and hopefully motivate you all to do it more consistently, to spend more time on it, to spend an outsized amount of time on it. Okay. And if you're in this room and you apply to 100 jobs in the last, 100 days, let's say, I mean, kudos, it is a lot of work, right? So it's great that you're putting in the hours. But if you spend the time connecting with 100 individuals, okay, not all 100 will apply. It will take about as much time once you leverage what we teach you today, and it will have at least 10x return on your investment. Okay, so we're going to talk about warm outreach and network maintenance and cold outreach. Okay, especially if you're younger in your career, you might not have a big network, but you all have a network. Okay, and what do we mean by that? Let's start with warm outreach. This is one of the most underutilized things, I guess, pieces of the strategy for people out there. Just last week, I had a coffee chat from a recent graduate who reached out to me completely cold on LinkedIn. He happened to go to my university. He happened to have the same major. He happened to mention both of those things when he was reaching out. Okay. Now, he also followed up because I missed his original email. But the point is, even though he doesn't know me, that's a lukewarm connection, right? Because we already have something in common. And you all have something in common with thousands of people, okay? Even if you don't have 900 friends on Facebook, you all have something in common with thousands of people. The average person meets anywhere from 10 to 40,000 people in their lifetime, okay? The world has changed. Today, most of us don't stay in our village, right? Most of us go outside of that, and certainly online, we're connected to a lot more individuals. So the very first piece of advice I give anyone that's looking to start networking is you don't have to do it cold. You're probably not thinking about certain people or friends of friends or lukewarm connections that could help you, okay? So what does that mean? What are some of these lukewarm connections? Well, again, it could be alma mater. It could be your university. It could be your high school. It could be a prep school. It could be a summer program that you did. School 16 alumni meet with each other all the time and help each other out, right? With folks that go through our program. That's one example of a warm network. You might reach out to, if you went to School 16, you might reach out to an alumni that you never spoke to before in your life, that you weren't in the same cohort, but they will definitely respond to you because it is a lukewarm connection. All right. You play sports, great. You played sports in high school or college, or you were in a little league team with somebody when you were in elementary school. Sounds like, hey, is that going to work? Right? I haven't talked to this person since we were 11 or 10. Well, again, you have that affinity, you have that something in common, and your chances of getting a response from that person go up 10x. Okay. Some of you may belong to a church or a religious group. Some of you may belong to a local community, right? Some of you may be volunteers. It really doesn't matter what you do. Anything that you do outside the house or anything that you have done in your past, even if you haven't done it in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, these are all warm connections and lukewarm connections, okay? So you need to be activating those first. Those people are very likely to help you, and they're likely to think of someone that might be able to help you as well. It's not going to be 100% success rate, by the way, but it is going to be a pretty high success rate. And a lot of people are ignoring that. And that is why I'm starting today's conversation with that. Abby asks, what is the best strategy to reach out back to people that you haven't spoken to for 6 to 8 months without sounding like you're in need, or even though you're looking for a job? What I'll say to that, Abby, is first of all, when we're reaching out to folks, we sometimes think like, okay, we haven't talked to them in so long. Why would they ever reach out, right? The best thing you can do, if you can do it, by the way, you don't have to do it, but the best thing you can start with is trying to add value to them, right? Well, can you make an introduction to them, right? Or maybe you go through their post history on LinkedIn or social media and you see that, they were looking for, something that you might be able to help with, or it might not even be related to work, right? It could be like, I was looking for tips on how to train my dog. Hey, here's this awesome video that I found on how to train your dog, your new puppy that you got. By the way, I'm looking for new opportunities. Would love to connect. I see you did XYZ, right? You could be helpful. Maybe you could do it over 2 or 3 messages. But the point is, you don't have to think of something crazy to add value with. I think it was Benjamin Franklin that used to put this approach really well into practice. If he had an enemy, what he would do is he would do a small favor for them. He would lend them a book, as an example, okay? Then they would feel like they owed him something, even though he didn't ask for anything. But when he did ask for something 6 months later, they were likely to help. It's human psychology. It's basic human psychology. Help in any way you can, even if it's not professionally. Be connected, do something, listen to their show, like their comment on LinkedIn. You know, did they just start a community and they posted something on LinkedIn and there were crickets? Add a like, add a comment, okay? 1 week later, ask for help about something for yourself. They're much more likely to help. But the other piece is, again, don't overthink it. That's probably the most important piece, I would say. Just follow up. Just follow up. You know, we one of our first speakers at School 16 when we launched this organization was a VP of sales at Google that we hadn't talked to in 6 years. We didn't have an audience. We just launched the school, you know, and we reached out to her saying, hey, would you like to come in as a guest speaker for free, by the way, right? Would you like to volunteer your time? She responded immediately saying yes. Okay, we hadn't talked in 6 years. So I would say don't overthink that kind of outreach. Now, when you reach out, don't ask for a job, right? You want to ask for advice. You want to ask for potential introductions. You want to hop on the phone and learn about their career. There's tactful ways of doing it. We're going to show you exact messages in a little bit, but don't worry about reaching out. Okay. So again, if you haven't leveraged your network in a while, please do it. If you haven't connected with folks that are in your actual network already, or maybe belong to the same affinity group, you need to do that. Okay. They're going to be that much more likely to help you. So today, whether that's going through your text and seeing who you haven't texted in a while, if you're on iMessage with this person, right? Or on LinkedIn, or just following up with people and adding people that are in your contact list, you should do that. And I do recommend that you do it on LinkedIn. Okay, that is obviously the place where you want to have as much of a network as possible. The other piece of really valuable thing that happens on LinkedIn is once you add, you know, for those of us, again, if you're younger here, maybe, or you just haven't spent a lot of time on LinkedIn, like I know a lot of teachers, they're not usually on LinkedIn. Certain sectors don't spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. So you might not have the 500 plus connections. Go out there, import all the lists, add every single person you know or loosely know or may have walked across in a conference, okay? They're going to add you back. And then when you're applying for an opportunity or you find a company you're really interested in, guess what? It's going to show up, hey, XYZ is connected to this organization, to somebody in this organization, and then you can go ahead and ask them for an introduction. So if you haven't spent time doing that, connect with or follow, but better to connect with as many people as you can on LinkedIn. Okay. I'm going to pause for a second, folks. Questions, any questions that come in? Again, feel free to ask. Thank you for Caitlin and Abby for asking the questions before. Okay, awesome. So let's talk about authentic network building here really quickly. Again, we're recording this, so feel free to take notes if you'd like, but this is basically just some best practices that we want to share with you, okay? It's just like when you meet anybody at any time. It could be at a dinner party going to a friend's place, right? Some people come off as arrogant. Some people come off as nice. Some people come off as curious. Some people come off as needy. There's all sorts of people in the world. You're going to come across them all the time. But what you want to do, especially when you're networking, is you want to put your best foot forward. You always want to be respectful. You always want to be curious. If anybody here has read the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, how does he win friends? By being curious, by liking what people say, even if he doesn't care about what they say, right? By being attentive, okay? I've met people before where in a 20-minute conversation, I said all of 2 sentences, and afterwards they told me how amazing the conversation was because they did most of the talking. Again, human psychology, people like to talk about themselves. People like giving advice. People like it when you reach out to them asking for advice. Not everybody, but many people will, okay? And they're going to want to help you as well. Offer value whenever possible, like we talked about in a little bit, in any way possible. Find people, by the way, that you actually want to connect with. No one's forcing you to do any of this stuff. Have fun with it. And again, these people will be in your contacts forever. They may help you today. They may help you tomorrow. They may help you in 10 years, but it's someone that you can always reference, okay? And then with anybody that you are in touch with, you know, stay in touch. It doesn't have to be on a monthly cadence. You also don't want to be annoying, right? You don't want to be that person that reaches out to them every single month if there's no reason to do so. But, you know, 6 to 12 months went by, feel free to reach out. Don't forget to ask directly for help. Now, that doesn't mean ask for a job, but when you are connecting people, let them know what you need. That is a big piece that people are missing sometimes, right? They feel like they have to dance around the fact that they may need help. But guess what? The best opportunities are found when people ask for help. A couple slides down, I'm going to show you how you can do that tactfully, okay? And paying it forward, of course, if you're more experienced helping younger people out, things like that can always help. Okay, so don't forget to connect with people that you don't know as well. We're going to talk about cold outreach best practices too. But LinkedIn is one of those really unique places where people are okay with you connecting with them cold. Now, they're not okay with you asking immediately for a job. They're not okay with you if you're trying to sell your consulting services right away in your first message and all that different stuff. But people want to connect. They want to generally help, and they want to be helpful. The reason why I'm pointing to the connect button here and not the message button is just a quick little hack for those of us that are going to be networking on LinkedIn, right? There are some limits if you're sending in mails. So usually what I like to do is I click on connect and then I add note. Okay, and there's your message. There's your custom message. There is a character limit, but there's enough characters there to say exactly what you need. Okay, and once they connect, you can follow up with something else. But make sure you add a custom message every single time. Okay, we're going to show you some templates today that you can leverage, but make sure that you do that. And also, one of the things about LinkedIn in messages or in-mail messages is these days they are sometimes seen as spam. They show up in a different view. If you're not connected, they might think you're going to sell them something. So you can do it if that's the only way to connect with somebody. But I would recommend against it. Okay, click on the connect button, add note, and you'll be good to go. Okay, so outreach best practices. Cold outreach is going to be part of what you're going to be spending your time on. Why? Well, because we're going to talk about in a little bit targeting the right opportunities. And when you're targeting the right opportunities, you're going to want to connect with people you don't know at companies that you're really excited about. And so how do you do that? It's going to be through cold outreach. But there are definitely some best practices. First of all, try to find some commonalities. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. It literally could be living in the same city. One of the benefits, by the way, of looking for hybrid or in-person opportunities, you're not competing with the whole world. Okay, and if you're in the same city, believe it or not, that creates some affinity with somebody else. You have something in common. But some kind of commonality. Again, you went to the same school, you belong to the same group on LinkedIn, you like the same post recently, you both commented on the same post. There's some commonality. When you're reaching out to folks, try to keep it short. Don't write a book. Remember, most of us care about what's going on in our heads. Everyone else is going to think the same way. Okay, try to be really direct and to the point. Keep your messages short. If you can, provide social proof. Okay, so I've been fortunate enough to teach at NYU. If I'm trying to build relationships at universities and I'm doing cold outreach, I mention that. Whatever you can, if you have it in your background, even if it was an internship, try to mention that. If there's anything that can give you social proof and it's relevant, try to mention that, okay? Again, if you don't have it, it's okay. We all have to start somewhere, but all of us have at least something. Consider sharing a resource or an article that could work, especially if it's relevant. If it's a random article, it's not going to work. Okay. You have to personalize your messages, even if it's changing 1 or 2 words in your outreach. That personalization will go a long way. Track your work. This is a big one. Okay. The best people I know, well, not the best people, but the best networkers I know are people that actually do it as if it was part of their job. They stop every single week and they say, hey, I haven't connected with anyone this week. Let me reach out to 3 or 4 folks. Let me follow up with people that I met at the conference. Let me do something. Create a cadence for yourself to do it consistently. You don't have to do it every day. You don't have to kill yourself doing it. But if you feel like a week has gone by and you haven't reached out to anybody, maybe Thursday afternoons is your day to do it. Maybe Sunday afternoons is your way to do it. Okay. Try to schedule it in and track your progress, because then you'll be able to clearly see what might be missing. Maybe I didn't reach out to enough people. Maybe I didn't follow up with people. Maybe I waited too long to respond to them. You can't improve what you don't measure, as most of you have already heard. Okay. And of course, make it as easy as possible for the other side. We're going to show you how to do that in the outreach, but that's giving them an option to connect, giving them a specific time. One of the worst things I see that people that don't really do a lot of cold outreach do the first time around is they feel like they have to be convenient. So they say, hey, we're both in New York. I'd love to meet for coffee, but if that doesn't work, that's cool. We can do a Zoom call, or I guess we're all sick of Zoom, so let's maybe do a phone call instead. That actually creates decision paralysis, and that makes it harder for somebody to follow up with you. So give them one option. Hey, are you available for a call next week? Okay. Hey, do you have some time Thursday afternoon between 1 and 5 p.m.? Better to give a time than nothing at all, because then they're going to think, okay, I have to now look at my schedule. Boom, forgot. Not going to follow up. Make it as easy as possible for somebody to actually respond to you. Again, there's the right way to do networking and there's a way that doesn't work. And so remember, if you're doing things that are high, that have a higher likelihood of having more of an outcome, you're going to start getting wins. You're going to be more motivated to keep on going, and you're going to see results faster, guaranteed. Okay. Some messages I'm sharing with you. I promise some templates. So there's about 3 coming up. This is a real one from a former student at School 16. So our students, every single week, as they're learning about sales, marketing, product management, operations, they're also doing outreach. They're doing career development activities, something that most universities don't do. When I taught at NYU, I made my students do this as well. Okay. What does that mean? Well, it means actually doing the outreach in a cadence. So this particular gentleman was finishing up at University of Michigan, looking for an internship. Actually, he wasn't finishing up. He did graduate last year, but he was a rising junior. And this message, by the way, for me, it's a little long. I wouldn't do it that way. So remember, whatever you do, do it in your own voice, in your own way. But for him, this worked. He was really, really upfront. He said, don't get me wrong, I completely understand that I don't meet any criteria to be your co-founder. I guess he was applying for a co-founder role. So I'm reaching out about an internship. Now, this gentleman was lucky enough to be able to do an unpaid one. I'm not saying everybody here can and should if you're younger in your career, but he was real upfront, and he was offering value upfront as well. He explained he's an aspiring founder. They're both in the Michigan system. Not only did he get a response from this guy, he got a paid internship, and this guy offered to invest in his startup 10 months later, because this young student was working on a startup idea while at Michigan. So all this from a cold message. Well, lukewarm, right? They were related. I think they were both related to the Michigan system. Okay. It can be a message like this. Let's say you are in a sales development role, and fill in the blank, or maybe your last role was marketing and now you want to do product marketing, whatever it might be. Well, one relevant way to connect with people is to find people that have followed your path, or the path that you're looking to follow. Maybe you were a teacher and you want to get into ed tech. We're going to talk about targeting opportunities in a second here, but mentioning this is going to be really important. I want to see if you'd be open to connecting as I'm looking to transition from being an SDR to product marketing function, something I read about today that someone did successfully. Okay. I would love to learn about how you did it. Oh, wow. This person wants to know about how I did it. That's awesome. I haven't had anybody reach out to me in a week. I'd love to help them out. Okay. Someone out there is going to feel that, and you'd be surprised how often you're going to get a response if it's targeted like that. If it's relevant to the person, they're likely to respond. Okay. Do you have some time for a call next Tuesday? Similar, you can fill in the blank, take a screenshot if you'd like. Okay, very similar, connecting for a short call, just looking for feedback. When people say informational interviews, this is what they mean. Getting information about their career, their job, whatever it is that you're interested in. You can say this stuff up front. You don't want to dance around what your ask is. Your ask is for a call. Okay, short call. If they like you, by the way, it won't be a short call. You won't be able to get them off the call. Sometimes these calls go an hour, right? But you don't want to set expectations. Hey, I want to take an hour of your time with somebody you don't know. Being direct, being brief, and being respectful is always going to result in more yeses than nos. And if you haven't done it, after today, after this session, find 10 people. Let's say you want to be in customer success and you used to work in healthcare customer service in a hospital, okay? And you want to do customer success at a healthcare startup. Well, find 10 people in customer success that you want to connect to, that you want to ask for advice on how they were able to transition careers, get into that career, or whatever it is. Make it targeted, send this exact message. I guarantee you probably at least 1 or 2 will respond, if not more, especially if you follow up, and especially if you're actually targeted. Okay. This was from an early speaker that we had at School 16. She was at Facebook. She's now in another company. And she had some amazing advice that I tell every single person that I meet now. Okay. I'm in my 30s. I learned this from a 25-year-old. When she was talking to somebody in a networking setting, just like what we just described, in the end, instead of saying, hey, can you introduce me to this particular hiring manager? I really want to interview for a product management role at Facebook. Okay. Now, by the way, that might sometimes work, but instead she said, if it was a good conversation, by the way, if the conversation kind of fell flat, which it did for her, even though she's charismatic and really good experience, if the conversation went well and she said, what do you think I could do to stand out for an opportunity at Facebook? Not, can you introduce me to X? Not, hey, do you have any job openings? What do you think I could do to stand out for an opportunity at Facebook? And guess what would happen if the conversation went well? Oh yeah, let me introduce you to Mary. She's a hiring manager on the product marketing team. I think your experience is great. You should talk to her. Okay. And if they didn't like you, they won't say that, and that's okay. On to the next one. Again, the whole point of starting to do this type of work is understanding that you're not going to have wins 100% of the time. But if you do the right work, you will have some wins, and that'll keep you going. That's what we're trying to accomplish here, is to spend our time more effectively so that we can start getting these positive outcomes, which is exactly what people in the best roles do anyways. Okay. The next thing I'd say is remember to be curious about somebody else. We talked about this before, right? But it's really, really critical. And that curiosity will take you a long way. Okay. So I've talked a few times about targeting. Again, today's conversation is how to move up to the top of the list, to the top 1%. And I'm not kidding when I say 1%. If you just do, I say if you do 50% of the things that we talk about today, you will be in the top 1% of applicants out there. That's how important this is. This is why some people are struggling to find opportunities. This is why some of you may have been struggling to land interviews, right? Maybe some months were good, some months are bad. Totally okay. By the way, I've been there. I have a brother who's a chief architect. He's an engineer. He's a very technical engineer. Twice in his career, he was unemployed for 6 months to a year. This stuff is cyclical. This stuff happens. Okay. It's not always easy, but there are things you could do to spend your time more effectively. Okay. And most people are not doing this stuff. I'm going to share some more screenshots of what I'm seeing from thought leaders. You may have heard of this gentleman. He runs one of the biggest customer success software companies out there, Nick Mehta. Met him at a conference years ago. Don't know if he remembers me. I think I was trying to sell him something for a software company I was working for. But, we're connected on LinkedIn. And if you're going to read anything here, for this one point that he made, it would be this. Okay, this is specifically for people that are interested in customer success. I'm giving you all examples in today's session. Some of them might not be relevant to you, but think about how that applies to you. And if you're not sure, ask us in the chat. We'll come up with it together. Okay. But here's what he says. One idea is if you're an accountant, let's say you're an accountant and you're done with it. You've been doing tax accounting for a while, not your thing. When I was in finance, it became not my thing. I decided to leave. I got into tech, okay, a while back. When I was in tech, I decided I wanted to teach. I became a professor, right? So when you're transitioning careers and when you're looking to make a move, increase the chances of success. If you're an accountant, focus on software as a service companies selling to accountants. Why? Well, because that company is going to value your domain expertise. Because most of the sales, if you're looking for a sales role, most of the sales or marketing or customer success roles, in the case of what Nick is talking about, most of the people in those roles are not going to know anything about accounting. And look at you coming in, speaking the language of their customers. Don't you think that's going to be valuable? It's going to be valuable to somebody. So focus your approach. This is one example of what we're talking about. We're going to talk about targeting. Whatever it is whatever it is you spent a lot of time on, okay, how can you leverage that to retell your story and to target opportunities? What does that mean? Well, if you're applying for in this case, if you're applying for customer success and you were an accountant, your whole story needs to talk about your knowledge about accounting and your knowledge about dealing with customers. That's it. Nothing else. Only what's the most important for these targeted opportunities. If you work in a restaurant industry, considering talking to restaurant tech vendors. You know how many companies sell to restaurants? A lot. POS systems, selling insurance, selling software that can help them get repeat customers, a lot. So even if you don't have experience working in tech and you work in a restaurant, you might think, well, I was just a server. No, that's going to be relevant to somebody. You're going to know how to talk to owners within these restaurants. And that's what you need to sell them on. Questions? Another great piece of advice I found in terms of targeting your efforts, okay? And this might be hard to believe, but if you find 5 companies, let's say you're from Dallas, Texas, okay? Dallas, Texas has startups. If you're interested in tech, we're going to talk about tech. We're a school for people that want to land opportunities in tech without learning how to code, so that's what we think about a lot. That's why we make a lot of references to tech. But let's say you're in Dallas and you want to land an opportunity in tech. Okay. Finding 5 companies that really speak to your heart. Like you like the executives, it's a cool industry, the customers they work with, you really care about, right? If you come from healthcare, maybe you really care about patients, people that are suffering. Maybe you have a family member that went through something, you really care about the customer segment. Target companies that speak to you for whatever reason. Again, maybe their product, their service, their customers, something. Their leadership, you love their leadership. You've been reading their posts for a year. Okay, if you find 5 organizations in Dallas and apply to them and try to find opportunities within those companies and try to network your way into those companies, I guarantee you it'll be a better use of your time than applying to 500 random jobs online. I guarantee. If you do this and it doesn't work for you, reach out to me directly, vadim@school16.co. I'll have a call with you to give you advice. Okay. Hyper targeting is what works, and it is exactly what you need to do in a competitive market like this, because nobody's doing it. Because people, well, let's face it, it can be more, it can feel like more work. It can feel a little bit more uncertain than just hitting easy apply, but it is actually what works. Okay. So again, focus on your domain expertise. Are you an accountant? Good. Were you a nurse at one point in your life? Great. Were you a teacher? Focus on your industry knowledge. Focus on your network. By the way, hey, my dad wasn't this, but let's say my mom was a partner at a law firm, and I grew up having dinner with hundreds of lawyers. Well, guess what? You probably know more lawyers than most of people in the whole world, right? You're in the top 1% or top 0.01% of people that know lawyers, right? So you have a competitive advantage when it comes to knowing lawyers, for better or worse, right? There you go. There's that competitive advantage. Okay. But here's what this particular person said. Yes, leverage LinkedIn to see if you have common connections, but targeted cold emails still work surprisingly well. Why did this person say surprisingly? Because people think cold emails don't work. And you're right. Spray and pray approaches do not work. But if you target your outreach, if you make it clear why it's relevant, if you show social proof like we talked about before, like I do when I reach out to universities, I was doing it this week, that's why it's fresh and top of mind, then people will respond, and they will respond at a surprisingly high rate. Okay, just to throw out some numbers out there, for cold emails that are targeted, your response rate could be 10 to 20%, 10 to 25% in some cases. Okay, if it's good and it's targeted, 1 out of 10 people to 1 out of 2.5 people, if 2.5 people was a thing, will respond to you. And you might be surprised, like, oh my God, I didn't think that would work. Well, it will if it's targeted. The reason why people complain about it not working is because usually it's not targeted. Okay. Another, if you are subscribed to School 16 emails, you would have seen this screenshot, but I just wanted to talk through it really quickly here. Jason Lemkin, successful founder of EchoSign, competitor to DocuSign, sold it for a few $100 million, I believe. Now he has a venture capital fund and a massive conference that gets, I think, about 9,000 to 10,000 people in attendance several times a year. Okay. Here's his advice. Slow it down. Really, really research the company you're applying to. Now, for those of you for whom that sounds overwhelming, yeah, if you're applying to 100 companies a week, you're not going to research all the companies. Forget about it. Don't waste your time, right? But what does he mean by slow down and really, really research? Well, it's that targeted approach. If you are a good fit, if you feel like you're meant to be there, you're not going to be wasting time on everything else. Write the world's best email sharing what you could do and improve in CS. In this case, CS means customer success. Sometimes it means computer science. Here it means customer success, right? Or sales, or marketing, or operations, or program management, or product management, or media buying, or whatever it is you want to do, or what your experience is or was. Okay. This is one of the things that gets results the fastest. People don't talk about enough what they can do for somebody once they have the role. The best job candidates that I know started doing the work before they even got the role. Okay. Now you can limit the amount of work that you do, but let's say you spend an hour basically doing what you would do in the first week on the job, and then share an update with the hiring managers about your findings that can add value. Guarantee you nobody's doing that. You're immediately in the top 1%. He said 2% of candidates do this. I commented on Jason's comment. He replied, yeah, nobody does it. So 2% is a guess. It's less than 1%, literally. People don't do this, okay? Hiring is tough. He's saying hiring is tough. we're all sitting here thinking, hey, finding a job is tough. Well, yeah, it's tough. But for people that are looking for high quality, relevant talent, hiring is tough right now because almost all the candidates that are applying when they post a job are irrelevant. So how do you weed out people from the noise? Well, it's the people that make themselves heard and seen that do stand out. Now, don't be annoying. Don't pester them for a job. Do add value. Do follow up with why your skills are relevant. If you do the research, you'll be able to do that. And he said, SaaS companies that don't have room and aren't looking for a few truly great hires. So there are people that might not even have room in the budget, but in the back of their mind, they're looking for somebody good. And when that somebody good comes along, and this is the unlisted opportunity we were talking about, they will give them the time of day. Guess what? It can only be found through networking and following up directly. There's no other magical way. That's how this is done. Okay. There's often one spot at least everywhere that is growing. So, there's a couple different ways to think about it. There are sectors that are growing. Healthcare has huge demand. Automotive industry, cars are expensive right now. It's hard to find a car, self-driving cars, AI. There's certain industries that are working. I should say that are growing. Target those industries. There's certain roles within organizations that are growing that are in higher demand than others. We talked about adding revenue to the bottom line or reducing costs. If you can prove that you can do that, somebody out there is looking for you. They just haven't found a match, and you have to do that work for them. Okay. Can't think of a single inbound applicant that did this work. That's how important this is. That's how important it is to do this sort of the opposite of what most people are doing. Okay. Any questions, folks? I'll pause again. Let me check the chat. Nothing yet. Okay. We have about 8 minutes here. We might go a few minutes over, but if other questions come up, please let me know. Okay. So again, how do you target companies? Well, geography is one. What industries do I already have knowledge about? What am I passionate about? What do I like? Okay. What do I like spending my time on in my free time? Do I read about cars all the time? Great. Do I read about fashion all the time? Awesome. This should influence what kind of career opportunities that we're targeting, we're looking for. Okay. Even if you want to get into a career that you weren't in before. And the last piece again is, how can I make it as easy as possible for somebody to connect the dots, to really make it clear why I am the right fit, why they should talk to me. Okay. Okay. So a few things to summarize here, and then I'm going to pause again for questions. So please try to think of questions, especially if you were looking to learn something in today's event, we didn't get to it or it wasn't covered. So again, only spend time on targeted opportunities. 5 is for sure 5 targeted companies, right? Where there could be multiple roles within each company is way better than 500. If you want a specific example of this, go to school16.co/resources. I'm going to drop it here in the chat. There's a lot of free webinars that we've done with experts in tech. Resources. Hopefully I spelled that right. Okay. Go there and look up SpaceX. There's a gentleman there that we interviewed a little while back that got a job working at SpaceX. And the way that he did that is after college, he realized that he only wanted to work at Tesla or SpaceX. That's it. I guess he loved Elon. Maybe it feels differently now. But all he did is he took a job working for his dad's part-time, working for his dad's used car dealership. And for 6 to 12, I think it was 10 months total it took him, he only reached out to people in Tesla and SpaceX. Okay. And then this random thing happened, by the way. This random thing happened that he was hired for that would set him up for an incredible career. In college, he used to spend his summers welding things. Raise your hand if you know somebody that's a welder. I don't. Turns out there's not a lot of people out there that are welders that are really good with welding metal. Turns out after all this application to SpaceX and Tesla, SpaceX was looking for a welder or a welding expert for like a breathing apparatus or something they were building for their rockets. Probably not a breathing apparatus, but some kind of apparatus. And they needed an expert welder to lead that team. Well, within 5 years, he was leading their whole engineering team for one of their departments. Okay. Now he has his own startup that raised millions of dollars. Very targeted approach. Okay. Leverage your network and do it daily even if it means liking and commenting on someone's post. If that overwhelms you, don't do it daily, do it once a week, but some kind of cadence, right? Something that you can keep up with. Customize your outreach when you do reach out. Don't forget to follow up. Most people are busy these days. They're not ignoring you. Let's not come up with reasons for somebody else that, that you're putting into your own head. We do that a lot. That's human psychology. It's okay, but don't do it. It's just going to slow you down. Remember to follow up. They probably missed your note, like that Bentley gentleman, the gentleman from my university that I spoke with. Remember to rebrand yourself to only speak to the roles you are pursuing. Okay, so let's say you're both interested in customer success and marketing. Well, you have to have two versions of your resume. You have to have two versions of everything, two versions of your story. That's, by the way, why it's so hard when you spread yourself thin like that. I would say focus just on customer success this month, marketing next month, because you're going to confuse yourself. But make sure your story speaks to customer success roles and nothing else. We oftentimes think that people will care about everything we've ever done. That's not true. If it's not relevant to them, they're going to tune out. You want to keep them engaged. So make sure you control the narrative about yourself and only talk about things that are relevant to you. When I say rebrand, that means also how you talk about yourself on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I think, is more important than your resume these days. If somebody applies to a role that I have open and I go on LinkedIn and there's nothing at all, I usually click next. Okay. It's psychological, but I like to see that they've done something relevant. And on LinkedIn, you can kind of see more information these days. Well, have they done certifications? Who are they connected to? Where have they worked? Have they done internships? What are they interested in? What are they posting about? What's their communication style? You can find out a lot about that on LinkedIn. And a lot of hiring managers think the same exact way, even if they're not telling you that. And remember, when you do this, remember to iterate your approach. Okay. Sometimes you'll send out 20 messages and no one will respond. I know that's discouraging and that can be demoralizing, but think about what you're doing wrong. Am I targeting the wrong companies? Am I not saying something relevant? Should I be maybe starting with lukewarm context, people that are related to something that I've done before? Change something about your approach if it's not working after a while. And remember, you're not doing anything wrong. You just need to adjust your approach. We all have to sometimes do the wrong thing to figure out the right thing. Okay, but don't give up. That's the biggest thing. That's why I've been talking a lot about wins today. Is if you iterate on your approach, you will start to see success. And the more success you have, the more likelihood you have of keeping on going. If that was grammatically correct. Okay, folks, I'm going to pause I will go over if anybody has any questions. We're going to pause for questions in a couple seconds here. And you can even unmute yourself, but do drop into the chat if you can. But really quickly, before you leave, I do want to let you know that our next cohort is starting. We are a live online school. We help people break into careers in tech without learning how to code. So we're not a coding school. More than 50% of jobs in tech are non-coding related. And we have an 8-week program coming up. And we understand that the economy and everything has made it difficult for some folks. We have a lot of international students. That's why we always make need-based scholarships available for folks. And I'm dropping the link in the comments here where you can connect with our admissions team. And what we always do in our admissions team is we'll have a one-on-one conversation that was similar to the session that we had today. Okay, even if becoming a student at School 16 is not relevant for you, that's okay. That's not necessarily our priority. Our priority is help you out in these conversations and provide you with some guidance so that you leave with a better understanding of the direction that you should take. Okay. Last but not least, don't forget to follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn. Some of you heard about this event on LinkedIn. And again, you can, of course, subscribe to our newsletter on school16.co to hear about future events. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Any questions from anybody here today that maybe we didn't get to? You can unmute yourself if you'd like.
Not a question, just thank you for the tips. It was really helpful to think about these things in a different way.
Yeah, of course, Vanessa. I'm glad it was helpful. And, I remember folks that come to our events. So if you start putting this into practice, connect with me on LinkedIn. You start putting this into practice and questions come up. I'm always happy to give a quick response. At the very least, asynchronously on LinkedIn to point you in the right direction. But thanks for coming. Anybody else before we wrap up? Okay, folks. Well, thank you so much for joining live today and spending the time with me and with us here at School 16. Again, we'll provide you with a recording. If you RSVP to this event, we already have your email. and we will reach out to you. And hopefully this was valuable. Again, you don't have to do everything that was shared with you today, but if you do one or two of these things, you will start seeing better results. And remember, most people aren't doing it. That is your biggest competitive advantage, is doing things that other people are not. Okay. Thank you so much, folks. Good seeing everybody. Glad to hear that it was valuable, and hope to see you at a future event here at School 16.